Why does the USA have a lower quality of life than some other countries despite being much, much wealthier? GDP is total. If one person makes $100,000 and a family of 5 makes $110,000, the family is not better off even though their income is higher. Norway's GDP per capita is 99,266. The US is 80,412. So Norway has almost $20,000 more per person than the US does. https://en.wikipedia.org/list_of_countries_by_nominal_per_capita. 400 people own half the wealth in America. How are you measuring quality of life? Because generating wealth is one thing, but distributing it efficiently across society is another matter. These questions always ignore the fact that the USA is more similar in size and population to the entire EU, not one European country. Many American places, like MA, have extremely high standards of living. There's also the fact, whether we'd like it to be that way or not, that the US spends many times more than the EU combined on its military, as well as the fact that American society is designed to create great individuals, not equality. To the system and many metrics, if 10 people go hungry and one man builds a world empire, it looks as though 11 people are doing well. Because wealth in the hands of a few doesn't make life better for all. It doesn't. The US has very high standards of living, essentially on par with Western Europe, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And I guess Japan. And I mean this for middle and working class people, and also for wealthy people, don't need a paycheck for their income. Poor people don't like being poor anywhere. The details are where it differs. All the countries I listed are S tier. Compare GDP/GNP versus GDI. Norwegians own a larger share of their economy than most other nations. They also have great social programs so that when the business cycle results in a downturn, recession, depression, regular people are not so harshly affected. It has a lower quality of life. Really? I mean, there are some essentials, but that sounds incredibly subjective. Population. Norway might have a nearly 50x lower GDP, but they have over a 60x lower population. The per capita GDP of Norway is higher, so the average Norwegian is considerably wealthier. For one thing, Norway has 160 the US's population. But also, we spend a shit ton of our resources providing for global security to many of the countries that have a higher quality of life than us. Basically, join NATO and you can spend less on your defense because you have the might of the US military backing you up. I'm not complaining, I don't trust most of those countries to keep us secure. The diversity and sheer size of the US are two factors that aren't going away anytime soon. Been to some of those Scandinavian countries? Noticed how everyone looks like they come from the same gene pool? They did. They are more likely to have the same health issues as each other, which allows healthcare costs to be lower. Another issue is the sheer size of the US. Getting from Montana to Florida is not a quick trip, regardless of how you travel. But many European countries can be crossed by car in just a few hours. It is much easier to put a railway in a smaller place. It is much easier to have mass transit in a place without suburban sprawl. It is much easier to restrict cars in a place where they are not made but only imported. We also have a media issue here. I would argue that the actual quality of life is not much worse, but that those who complain about it are much louder in comparing themselves to the life they see portrayed on television and the internet. The wealthy don't care what quality of life middle and lower class Americans have. Why is this sub full of passive-aggressive America bad circle jerk questions lately? I am sure there are other countries with a better quality of life, but there are also many with a lower quality of life. Does Norway have an endless flow of foreigners that require care and expense to house, adjudicate, educate, feed, and process? And America's population is about 60x larger than Norway's. Emphasis on money rather than family, community, relationships and real things that truly make life worth living and make people happy for real. There are maybe 2 or 3 countries with higher median PPP adjusted household disposable income than America, and they're small countries equivalent to a small state or large county in America. It's not an apples to apples comparison. If you break out the US states or counties, the top US states would have better median PPP adjusted HH disposable income than those other countries: Norway, Switzerland, Luxembourg. The standard of living for the average person in America is better than in other countries. Quality of life is subjective. I don't think you can definitively state that it's better than other countries. There are some cultural factors that reflect people's personal choices which tend to lead to worse outcomes in America. Typical American cuisine is worse. The US is very diverse and it's easy to avoid that food, but many don't. That diversity is a double-edged sword. It makes things interesting, but it can make social cohesion harder. Countries like Norway are exceedingly homogeneous. Lack of cohesion can make social life in the US a bit more rough in places. The people in power don't care about us. The people who control corporations and money don't care about us. And in the end, we really don't care enough about ourselves or each other to take significant action to change anything. Yeah, we love to protest and organize, but we don't follow through with anything and get bored very easily. Especially when it gets cold outside and we don't want to be on the streets anymore.